Welcome everyone to a very, very special event with Celebration Magazine Live. Today is a special presentation of our Movers and Shakers series. I am Zoe Frost, your hostess with the mostest, and today we're gonna have Jill Rumbley Beam taking the floor and telling us what it's like growing up Rumbly. Now, this event has been extremely popular. We had 195 people registered for today. Now, if you'd ever like to join us live in the Zoom, go to celebrationmagazine.com and you can register for any of our events and you can participate there, or you're welcome to join us here on Facebook. So without further ado, we've got Jill Rumbley Beam, and she is Rosemary's baby. Jill, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Zoe. I'm so excited to be here this afternoon with all of you. I wish I was able to see all of you, but I feel your presence. I know you're there. Like I say, I'm just really elated and excited to be here in my house, getting to speak to all of you about what it is like being the daughter of Jack and Rosemary Rumbley. Now, first of all, I've got to give a shout out to Deborah and Greg Saxon for the amazing job that they have done since the beginning of time with Celebration Magazine. I am a proud cover girl, twice officially. I guess you could say actually 3 times, because when she put all the Zooming pictures on there on the cover, I found myself. So actually, I can actually say I have a trifecta of being a cover girl with Celebration Magazine. But this magazine has done so many amazing things, and even during the pandemic, it just continues to be fun and engaging, and just anything they can do to get people to just continue to be alive during what we're experiencing right now. Of course, Mother sends her love to all of you. She is actually speaking in Flower Mound today. She got to go. She's not a great fan of Zooms because she says she feeds off her audience when she speaks. But she got to do a live talk today in Flower Mound. And then last week, she actually, she still drives. And last Wednesday, she spoke in Norman, Oklahoma. Last Wednesday, I wanted to go with her, and she says, no, I'm just going to drive myself because, I just need to know that I can still do this. And she says, that's how I stay active and do whatever she needs to do to stay physically active. So she drove to Norman. And then on Thursday, she spoke at the Park City Club. So some groups are meeting live, some groups aren't, but we just have to do what we do and continue to be happy. And Mother and our phrase is always joy in tribulation. And Mary Frances, I know you're there, and you can see I'm wearing my glittery top just for you, because you told me that whenever we appear in person, we always need to sparkle or glitter. So today I have on my glitter top, and I hope that I'm sparkling. I also have to give you a disclaimer, Mary Frances Hanson, because I'm going to talk about you during my talk, because you are a very intricate part of my life, and we'll talk about that later. But everybody always, of course, knows Mother, Rosemary Rumbley. But I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my father, Jack Rumbley. He was an amazing man. He was the principal percussionist with the Fort Worth Symphony for 40 years. He played the kettle drums, the big old pot drums. He was always in the back, the tallest person in the Fort Worth Symphony being in the back because he got to stand up. All the drummers stood, all the rest of the orchestra sat. But my daddy would stand so proudly behind the timpani, the kettle drums. Now, he also played in the Casa Manana Orchestra for 40 years. So being a product of a professional musician, I did not have a choice whether I wanted to play a musical instrument or not. When the Dallas Independent School District allowed children to choose an instrument, it was when I was in the 3rd grade. And so my daddy sat my brother and I down. My brother's 1 year younger than I am. And he sat us down. He says, it's not too soon. My brother's name's Phil. Phil, it's not too soon for you to be thinking about an instrument you want to play. But Jill, what do you want to play this year? Because it's time for you to choose an instrument. You will choose an instrument. You will major in music, and you will attend North Texas State University. So those were tall marching orders that were given to me. Now, I really wanted to play the drums. I told my dad I want to play the drums. I want to be just like you. And Mother says, no, sorry, only one drummer per family. So I had to choose an instrument, and I chose the flute. But I'm so glad that I chose the flute, because the flute has, hold on. I've got to plug this thing in, all right? Hang on, hold on. I thought I had it fully charged, but I guess I don't. So we're going to scoot over. Hold on. Don't you just love technology? We're going to plug in here. Hang on. There we go. Perfect. We got to plug in here. Voila. You know, I charged it, but oh well. So anyway, I chose the flute, and I'm so glad I chose the flute, because the flute has one case. The drums have multiple cases. Now, my brother, on the other hand, he chose the trombone because he loved, for those of you that are from Dallas or remember Mr. Peppermint, because Mr. Peppermint would play his cane like a trombone. So my brother insisted on playing the trombone because he loved Mr. Peppermint. So I would be remiss if I did not start my talk this afternoon without a little ditty on my flute. And here, this is for you, Daddy, and this is for all of you. And it's titled Be Our Guest, from the musical Beauty and the Beast, because I want to thank Celebration Magazine and all of you for allowing me to be your guest wherever you are today. So I'm going to move over to the music, start it up, and I'll be right back.
great, Jill.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me turn that off. Okay. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right. Well, I cannot tell you how many times I have been asked, what is it like being the daughter of Rosemary Rumbley? Well, I describe it in one word, and that is the word fun. F stands for fascinating, U stands for unusual, and N stands for never a dull moment. Now, some of the stories that I'm telling you today, I was too young to remember, but Mother would tell me constantly. She continues to tell me things constantly that I've heard when I was a young child. I got to take a little side street. When my husband met my mother for the first time, he says, I think your mother has.
Everybody just hold in there with us for a second. It looks like we might have lost connection with Jill. So we'll give her a minute to get back in with us. In the meantime, I don't play the flute, so I can't do that for you. But we'll give it just a second. I'm sure she'll be right back. Hi, Dan.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
I just saw what was going on. Thought I'd
Ah.
come back in. Hey, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Saw your text.
Which I want to let everybody know. They were asking about tamales. So Jan Reynolds said Dallas Tortilla and Tamale Factory is a great place for tamales. So just so
Okay.
you know.
Am I back on?
You are back on, Jill. All right.
Okay,
Wonderful.
great. All right. So I cannot tell you how many times people have asked me, what is it like being the daughter of Rosemary Rumbley? And fun, fascinated, unusual, never a dull moment. Now, back to my husband, I'm going to take a little side street because he bought her a shirt one year for Christmas that says, I'm talking and I can't shut up. And he said, I know she was vaccinated with a Victrola needle because she talks constantly and she tells stories. And she always says, I want to tell the stories because I want to hear them again myself. Now, when I was born, which was on September 27th, 1954, I was born at Brooks Army Hospital in San Antonio, Texas. My daddy was in the very first 4th Army Band stationed at Fort Sam Houston. Now, believe it or not, on September 27th, 1954, there were 15 babies born on September 27th, 1954. My mother told my dad, she said, I am.
Oh. Hang on, Jill, pause just 1 second, darling.
All right.
There you go. You can start up again. I got to rename you.
Okay. So my mother was so worried that she was going to get the right baby because there were so many babies born on September 27th. So when it came time for Mom and Dad to go downstairs to see Jill Rumbley, there were all these cribs lined up. And the last baby, now my dad was 6'5", blue eyes about that big around. And so when they got to my crib, they knew that they had the right baby because I was the longest baby born at Brooks Army Hospital, 23 inches, about that big around with blue eyes. So there was no question that they had the right baby. Now, my dad's first teaching job was in Alice, Texas. Raise your hand. I can't see anybody testify they know where Alice, Texas is. His first band directing job was at Dubose High School. Now I think it's Dubose Junior High. But he was the band director. His first teaching job was at Dubose High School in Alice, Texas. Now, Alice, is primarily a Hispanic-speaking community. Now, my brother, Phil, was born in Alice Hospital, January 8th, same day as Elvis Presley's birthday, 1956. Now, believe it or not, in this little bitty hospital in Alice, there were 4 babies born on January 8th, 1956. Once again, my mother told my dad, I'm really concerned about getting the right baby because there were 4 babies born today, January 8th, 1956, in this hospital. Well, again, Alice is primary Hispanic. So daddy and mother walked down to the cribs. There were the 4 cribs. Phil was the last crib. There was Lupe Gomez, Hector Garcia, Raul Rodriguez, and Phil Rumbly. So they knew they had the right baby. Now, we loved Alice, Texas. We were a 1-car family. Now, let's talk about recreation with Rosemary Rumbley, growing up a kid with Rosemary in Alice, Texas. Mother loved going to the movies. But again, we were a 1-car family. So she would put Phil on her bicycle in the little basket up front, put me behind her. She would go pedaling up to the movie theater, and there we would sit like a bump because she would warn us, we cannot move. Now, one day she told us, I want to see the movie Giant. You will hate this movie, but I want to see the movie Giant. And you will sit like a bump on a pickle when we go to this movie because I want to see Giant. Well, my mother also reminded my brother and I that we are products of educators. And she would constantly remind us that educators don't make a lot of money. She says, you'll always have everything you want, but we are poor because you are products of educators. My grandfather used to say, I remember my mother say, I'd come home and I'd say, Granddaddy, I've got the meanest teachers, the meanest teachers. And my granddaddy would say, honey, they're not mean, they're just hungry. So anyway, Phil and I went to go see the movie Giant with Mother. We walk into the theater. What's the very first thing that happens when you walk in the door of a movie theater? You smell popcorn. Well, Phil and I walked in. I remember saying, Mom, I want some popcorn. Phil said, Mom, I want a Coke. And Mother said, remember, once again, you are products of educators. We are poor. My next comment was to her, but Mother, I'm thirsty. And she responded by saying, swallow hard. So there you go. Well, Phil and I sat in the movie like bumps on a pickle, like we were told to do, and the movie was over. Now, for some reason, my brother always insisted on wearing cowboy boots with shorts. We never were a country family, but he insisted on wearing cowboy boots. Well, the movie was over, and you know how movie theater seats are. They are on a spring. So I stood up on the floor. Phil stood up on the seat. Well, immediately the seat goes up. Phil's boot gets lodged in the seat. He goes into utter hysterics. I love my brother. I loved my brother. When he went into hysterics, I went into hysterics. And I said, Mother, you've got to get Phil out of that seat. And she said to me, oh, don't worry. We'll just leave him here. We can go get another brother somewhere else. Well, finally, we managed to take his foot out of the boot and then managed to get the boot unlodged. But that's the sense of humor Mother always had. Now, another thing is, when I lived in Alice, Mother always wanted me to take every kind of lesson that she had. I took piano lessons, I took dance lessons, I took twirling lessons from the feature twirler at Dubose High School, where Daddy was the band director. So I did everything she always wanted to do that she was unable to do. I was in recitals, I was in piano recitals, and I was so blessed to have all these things that she enrolled me in to do. And we later on, When I was 6 and Phil was 4, we moved to Dallas, Texas. And Daddy got his first teaching job at Griner Junior High. Of course, now it's Griner Middle School. Now, when the Rumbleys got to Dallas, Phil and I attended Lee Elementary School. We moved to Oak Cliff. And we had a principal by the name of C.L. Duke. Now, Phil and I always referred to C.L. Duke as C.L. Duke, the principal. And I came home from school, my first day in school, and I said, "Oh, Mother, we have an amazing principal. His name is C.L. Duke, the principal." And Mother says, "Why do you refer to him as C.L. Duke, the principal, not just C.L. Duke?" And I said, "Because every morning we hear ding, 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 ding. This is C.L. Duke, the principal." Well, C.L. Duke, the principal, met Rosemary Rumbley. The year I was in 2nd grade, they were looking for a PTA president. Now, for those of you who have been involved in PTAs, you know that the PTAs raise money for the school. Well, C.L. Duke, the principal, found out that Rosemary Rumbley could direct plays. She could direct musicals. And so C.L. Duke, the principal, called my mother and said, "Rosemary, we want you to be a PTA president at Lee Elementary School. There is no election. I have elected you to be our president of the PTA at Lee. Now, you have to create a variety show." She said, "No problem." So the very first year, she produced a little play, a little parody around the television show Gunsmoke. She starred herself as Miss Kitty. So there you go. Now, C.L. Duke, the principal, Phil and I attended Lee I attended 1st grade to 6th grade. Phil attended 2nd grade to 6th grade. And she was the PTA president every year because she raised all this money for Lee Elementary School. Now, when you're in the 3rd grade, like I said, you get to choose an instrument. I chose the flute, Phil chose the trombone. But also when you're in the 3rd grade, you can join scouting. I wanted to be a Girl Scout. Phil wanted to be a Boy Scout. We immediately found a Boy Scout leader for Phil. He sat on the back row of the choir at Beckley Hills Baptist Church. His name was Smokey Clark. We loved Smokey Clark because he would rest his head against the baptistry and sleep through the whole service. So Smokey Clark was Phil's Boy Scout leader. Well, unfortunately, I wanted to join the Girl Scouts and I couldn't find one that didn't have already too many girls in it. So I told Mom, I said, "Mom, guess what? You have to become my Girl Scout leader." "Fine, I'd love to be a Girl Scout leader." So she got trained on how to be a Girl Scout leader. And then all the girls who were in other Girl Scout troops wanted to join Mother's Girl Scout troop because they knew that that would be a fun Girl Scout troop. So her troop had hundreds of girls in it. Now, when you are a Girl Scout, you get to go at the end of the year to a place called Whispering Cedars for an overnight camping trip. But if you have an overnight camping trip, what do you have to have? You have to have a latrine. So Mother had a latrine built. And that latrine stayed on our front porch for many years. Now, we did all kinds of little plays and little antics around that latrine on our front porch. Now, when my grandmother, who lived at 5438 Vanderbilt, where my mother lives now on the east side of Central, we moved. So the latrine had to move too. So the latrine ended up on my grandmother's front porch. And my grandmother said, "Rosemary, that latrine cannot be on my front porch. That would be very common." My grandmother always said things would be common. So that latrine did end up on my grandmother's front porch as well. Well, we moved right behind Carter High School. My father left Griner Junior High and became the first band director in 1966 at David W. Carter High School. My father also had the privilege of writing the school song, because when you're a new band director at a Dallas Independent School District high school, you get to write the school song. So Mother and Daddy wrote this school song. And since we lived right behind Carter High School, all the kids would come over for parties. He turned our garage into a party room. Everybody always wanted to go to the Rumbleys. Now, another thing that Phil and I thoroughly enjoyed is Mother would perform on stage at Casa Mañana or the Dallas Summer Musicals. And of course, as I mentioned, Daddy was in the Casa Mañana Orchestra. Now, Phil and I, we were old enough to stay home, but we always wanted to go to run around the concourse when Casa was in the round. That's all we did, was run around that concourse at Casa Mañana. But we were so excited because we got to meet so many people. Because Mother performed with Van Johnson, John Davidson, Ruta Lee, Ginger Rogers, and many, many, many more famous actresses. Now, one time, my daddy also played with little combos, these little bands, you know, like that would play at senior centers or dances or bar mitzvahs or something like this. And so one time Phil and I we were too young to stay home, but Mother had something to do and told Daddy, she says, listen, Jack, you're going to have to take the kids with you to whatever you're doing tonight because they can't come with me. I can't find a babysitter. They can't stay here by themselves. So you're going to have to take them with you. And Daddy said, well, I'm playing this very high-profile wedding at the Sheraton in downtown Dallas. Mother said, fine, just stick them in a corner with their Etch-a-Sketch. You know, that's the answer to the iPhone now. We had those little red screens that you'd make pictures with. That was our iPhone back in the 70s, the Etch-a-Sketch. So Mother said, just stick them in the corner with their Etch-a-Sketches, and if they're good, take them to the Dairy Queen and buy them a dip cone. They're only 10 cents. Because remember, we're poor. Educators are poor. You can do a dip cone, you know, with the chocolate if they're real good. Well, we got to the Sheraton and Daddy set us down with our little Etch-a-Sketches. And there we were playing, having a good time, you know, with our little Etch-a-Sketches. And I could see Daddy in the corner where the reception was going on. And I could see that the wedding was over. So I told Phil, I said, come on, let's just go in because Daddy's through. He's picking up his drums. Let's just go in and, you know, tell Dad, you know, we're here and we're ready to go. Well, the wedding wasn't over. They were taking the bride's pictures, all the pictures. So I told Phil, I said, Phil, let's go jump in the wedding pictures. And so we jumped in the wedding pictures, and I'm sure there's some bride today wondering, who are those children in our pictures? Well, needless to say, we did not get a dip cone. We were penalized because we didn't get a dip cone. Well, that was a nightmare story that we got over that finally. Well, you know, Phil and I grew up in a very happy household. I never heard my parents fight. I never heard them use any four-letter words, you know. And yes, our house was a revolving door. You know, Daddy would go, Mom would go, we'd have parties. And so, you know, we had a great time. We just had a fun time. And, you know, Mother to this day still asks me, Jill, did you ever feel neglected? Mother, how could I feel neglected? We ate the best meals ever. Salmon croquettes and huevos rancheros. Those were our choices. Well, and I will say when my brother and I moved out after graduating from high school, we had a little ceremony in the kitchen. She said, I am now blowing the pilot light out. The kitchen is permanently closed. My daddy was the Marie Callender's king for years. But we never worried about what we ate. And, you know, we were always happy. I really think we were raised Christian Scientist Baptists. We never took an aspirin. We never took anything. She just said, you're going to be happy. In fact, you know how normal children are when you wake up and you don't want to go to school. You say, oh, Mom, I got a headache. Oh, Mom, I got a tummy ache. She'd say, it's all in your head. Go to school, go to school, go to school. And that's what we had to do because we were happy. And now, later on, Mother got a job as the head of the speech and drama department at Dallas Baptist College, now university. Now, let me preface this first of all by saying I was in my daddy's high school band at David W. Carter. Now, when you are in the band and you're in high school, you are classified as a band nerd. I did not want to be a band nerd. I knew I couldn't be in the drill team. I knew I couldn't be a cheerleader because I had to be in band since my dad was the band director. So what's the alternative? You become a majorette. Now, my daddy always judged the majorettes. He was a pretty good judge of who was good and who was not good, who was rotten. Well, it came time my junior year. Daddy, I want to be majorette. And he says, well, I'm going to have to hire outside judges because if I judged the majorettes and you made majorettes, everybody would say, oh, the reason Jill got to be majorette is because her daddy's the band director. Well, he hired some judges, and of course, I became a majorette. I did not have to be a band nerd. Well, when I graduated from David W. Carter, it was time for me to choose a career. Now, Mother always told me, she said, Jill, you have to have a teaching certificate. And I told her, I said, oh, I know that because my daddy's mother, my Granny Rumbley, she told me at a very young age, Jill, if you have a teaching certificate and you eat breakfast, you are guaranteed to go to heaven. I believed her. So I continued to eat breakfast every day. Well, I wanted to major in physical education because I was always so active. She says, well, you got to get your education degree along with it. So I decided to attend Dallas Baptist College, where Mother was head of the speech and drama department. Of course I did. Now, she directed all the musicals, and I wanted to be the lead in all the musicals. And Mother says, well, Jill, I'm going to have to hire outside judges because all of your friends at Dallas Baptist College would say, well, the only reason you got that part is because you're the daughter of Dr. Rosemary Rumbley. Well, she gave the musical, The Music Man, which is her favorite musical. I auditioned for the part of Eulalie McKechnie Shin, which Mother always played at CASA as well as the Dallas Summer Musicals. I got the part of Eulalie McKechnie Shin. Then she gave Fiddler on the Roof. Mother always played the part of Yenta, the matchmaker. I auditioned for Yenta, the matchmaker. I got the part of Yenta, the matchmaker. Then she gave the musical Finian's Rainbow. I did not get the lead in Finian's Rainbow, but they have a deaf mute who is a dancer, and I got the deaf mute part. Yay. So I got to do that. I always wanted to be everything Mom did in what she did on the stage. Now, I would be remiss also if I didn't tell you about mine and Phil's sex education. You know, when you're little, you usually see the film in school that tells you about sex. I told Mother one day, I said, Mother, they're going to show the film. She goes, what film? I said, the film about sex. And she said, you two sit down. I'm fixing to give you your sex education in 6 words. Heed every word. Don't ever disgrace the Rumbly name. And to this day, those words haunt me if I'm ever tempted to do anything bad. Now, a long time ago when my mother went to North Texas State University. She went on to say, well, your grandmother dropped me off at North Texas State University, and her sex education to me was, don't get ruined. So there you go. That was her sex education in 3 words: don't get ruined. Well, when I was at Dallas Baptist College, now university, we were members of Cliff Temple Baptist Church. Now, one day, while Mother was at Dallas Baptist College, Dr. Charles Pitts was the president of this college. And a gentleman by the name of Earl Widener, who had directed the Laurel Land Easter pageant for many, many years, he lost his director of the Laurel Land Easter pageant. He called Dr. Pitts and said, Dr. Pitts, I'm looking for someone to direct the Laurel Land Easter pageant. I need someone good. And I will write you a check for $10,000 to Dallas Baptist College if you find me someone to direct this pageant. And Dr. Pitts says, Dr. Widener, I know the perfect person. Her name is Dr. Rosemary Rumbley. Come see me this afternoon with your checkbook. So Dr. Widener came to Dallas Baptist. Dr. Widener and Dr. Pitts walked into my mother's office, and they said, Dr. Rumbley, you are now the director of the Laurel Land Easter pageant. Mother said, okay. Well, in order to have a pageant, you need actors. You need a choir. Well, we were members of Cliff Temple Baptist Church. The choir was immediately recruited to be the choir in the Laurel Land Easter pageant. Now, Mother told every one of her students that she instructed at Dallas Baptist in speech and drama, if you appear in the Laurel Land Easter pageant, you will automatically get an A in my class. No, you don't have to attend class. You don't have to do homework. But if you're in this pageant, you'll automatically make an A in speech and drama. Well, the first year the pageant happened, it was a beautiful Easter morning. They were always at sunrise, Easter morning. Everything was beautiful. It was time for the moment for the disciples and Jesus Christ to go to the upper room to enjoy the Last Supper. Everybody was climbing up the ladder. The last disciple rushed up to Mother. Dr. Rumbly, so-and-so is sick, and he's one of the disciples. What do we do? And Mother just grabbed a kid and she said, go up that ladder. All you got to do is just sit there and participate in the Lord's Supper. So everybody climbed the ladder. It was beautiful. There was Jesus pouring the elements, breaking the bread, and we all looked in the upper room and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There were 13 disciples in the upper room. Well, they came down the stairs, and there was the kid that was sick. And my mother said, hey, I thought you were sick. And he says, well, I was, but I had a miraculous recovery this morning because I remember I was making a D in biology and I needed an A in your class to bring the D up. So see, everybody who participated got an A. He had a miraculous recovery. Well, it gets better. The next year, it was beautiful. The Cliff Temple Choir was singing. There were the 12 disciples. But it came time for the rooster to crow when Peter denies Jesus. And the sound man rushes to Dr. Rumbly and says, Dr. Rumbly, the cassette with the rooster crow has cracked. What are we going to do? And she says, don't worry. She goes climbing up into the sound booth. It came time for that moment, and there it was, Rosemary Rumbley. So the show went on with Rosemary Rumbley as the rooster. Well, the very last year, Mother decided she was going to give up directing the Laurel Land Easter pageant. She did it for 7 years, 7 years. And it was the last year. And once again, everything was beautiful. It was gorgeous. Disciples. But once again, it came time for the rooster to crow. And you heard, because the cassette had been played so many times. So that was the last of the Easter pageant. Now, another thing that I loved about growing up Rumbly were all the punchlines that we had in our family. All of our punchlines revolved around musicals. Like I said, Mother's favorite musical is the musical, The Music Man. Now, my brother and I played in many, many, many bands. We continue to play in many, many bands. And Mother always likes to come to sit on the front row to hear us play. But first, let me paint the picture of the musical, The Music Man. Professor Hill, he called himself the Music Man. He went to River City, Iowa, where he said he was going to start this boys' band. He knew nothing about boys' bands, knew nothing about raising money for musical instruments, for uniforms, but lo and behold, he raises money to start this boys' band, and uniforms, and instruments. And there he is in the gymnasium, and they're fixing to have this concert, and all the townspeople of River City, Iowa are sitting in this gymnasium, and Professor Hill raises his baton. But before that first downbeat, Mayor Shin says, "I better hear some gall darn tooting out of those horns." Well, that was a punchline in our family. Like I said, Mother insisted on sitting on the front row of every concert we gave. But before we blow one note, she demands to come backstage to look at us in the eye to say, "I better hear some gall darn tooting out of those horns because I paid for them." So that's a punchline in our family. I better hear some gall darn tooting out of those horns. Well, the second punchline revolves around Mother's favorite musical, The Wiz. It's the black version of The Wizard of Oz. Mother always loved the Wicked Witch of the West. She loves the scene where the Wicked Witch of the West is sitting in her chambers, and her servant comes up and says, "Wicked Witch of the West, I got some good news and I got some bad news. What do you want to hear first?" She says, "Well, I want to hear the bad news." "Well, the bad news is there's a brat, there's a scarecrow, there's a tin man, and there's a lion, and they're coming to do you in." And the Wicked Witch of the West says, "Nobody does in the Wicked Witch of the West." Then she asks her servant, "Well, what's the good news?" And the servant says, "Well, the good news is there ain't no more bad news." And the Wicked Witch of the West sings this song titled, "Don't Nobody Bring Me No Bad News. When I wake up in the afternoon, which it pleases me to do, don't nobody bring me no bad news. Because I wake up already negative and I wired up my fuse. So don't nobody bring me no bad news. If we're going to be buddies, you better bone up on the rules. Because don't nobody bring me no bad news. Because you can verbalize and vocalize, but just bring me the clues. But don't nobody bring me no bad news." And if I call my mother anytime and say, "Mother, I've got bad news," she breaks out into the chorus, "No bad news, no bad news. Don't nobody bring me no bad news, because I'll make you an offer, child, that you cannot refuse, but don't nobody bring me no bad news." So that's a punchline in our family. Don't nobody bring me no bad news. Now, the third punchline, you know, in life these days, sometimes you have to laugh to keep from crying. There was a point in my life, I lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I was an activities director for a retirement community called Liberty Heights. I was so excited about this job I had. They paid for me to get a CDL, a commercial driver's license. They paid for me to get a degree in gerontology. That's a degree you get to learn how to work with old people. Well, one day Mother was visiting, and I told Mother, I said, Mother, guess what? Today, I'm taking my residents on a field trip to the Vinatucci Pumpkin Farm. Mother said, what's the Vinatucci Pumpkin Farm? Oh, Mr. Vinatucci is famous here in Colorado Springs. When you visit his retirement, his pumpkin farm, everybody gets to take home a pumpkin. Oh, well, I want to go. Well, Mother drove up with me in my car, and I got on the bus, and Mother got on the bus, and I pulled up to the breezeway, and everybody got on the bus, driving down the freeway. Mother's on the bus. All the residents are on the bus. We get to the Vinatucci Pumpkin Farm. Mr. Vinatucci was Italian, of course. Welcome to the Vinatucci Pumpkin Farm, where everybody gets to take home their own pumpkin. Well, all the residents got out. Mother got out. I got out. We all found our favorite pumpkin on the bus. It was time to go back to Liberty Heights. All the residents got on. Mother got on. I got on. Everybody was smiling, holding their pumpkins. I was driving back down the freeway, got to Liberty Heights. Everybody got out. Everybody got off the bus except two people, Mother and Ed. If I was to see Ed right now, I'd recognize him. I'm sure he's gone on to glory. But Mother got off the bus with her pumpkin beaming from ear to ear, smiling. Ed got off the bus, and I looked at Ed, and he was holding his pumpkin so innocently, and I said, Ed, did you have a great time at the pumpkin farm? He looked at his pumpkin. He looked at me, and he said, did I go? So that's one of the phrases that we use whenever I ask Mother something. She'll say, can you do blah, blah? No, Mother, I have something to do. Oh, did I go? Did I go? Well, another thing I always wanted to do as a kid, and I still love to do to this day, I always wanted to be in pageants. I love pageants. I would never miss the Miss Texas pageant. I would never miss the Miss America pageant. I always wanted to be in pageants. When I was at Dallas Baptist College, they had the Miss Dallas Baptist College pageant. I won Miss Congeniality. I won Talent. But let's go back a while. When I was 8 years old, when I took dancing, Mrs. Carson, for those of you who took dancing at Storybook Playhouse who grew up in Oak Cliff, Mrs. Carson started a pageant called the Little Miss Pageant. The Little Miss Pageant. She wanted Mother to enter Jill in the Little Miss Pageant. Now, Mary Frances, I don't want you to take any offense in this I'm fixing to say, but this is what Mother told me. She goes, Jill, there are 2 reasons you can't be in the Little Miss Pageant. Number 1, I am not the typical pageant mother. I'm not like a John Benet Ramsey mother, because they live vicariously through the child that's on stage because they want to be the pageant queen. That's not me. And number 2, I hate to tell you this, but sometimes those pageants are fixed. I said, what do you mean fixed? And she says, well, they sometimes select the winner before the pageant takes place. Well, remember, I'm a happy child. I was never miserable. So I sure didn't want to be a pageant queen. If I wanted to be the queen, I wanted to win. Well, I couldn't be in the Little Miss pageant, but like I said, I was in Miss Dallas Baptist College. Mother said, don't do it. They already have the winner picked, I'm sure. Mother, quit saying that. They do not. They do not. Well, I believe it was 1995 or 94. Mary Frances, you can correct me when this is all over and everybody's off mute. Mary Frances Hanson started once again the Miss Texas Senior America pageant. She was the director, the most amazing director ever, ever, ever. And of course, she always asked Mother to be the MC because everybody knows Mother, and she knows she'd have people who would come to the pageant, maybe not just to see the pageant, but at least to hear Rosemary Rumbley. Well, Mother was the MC for many years, and I always sat on the front row. I lived vicariously through the queens on the stage, and I told Mother when I turn 60, I'm going to be in that pageant. And she says, well, that's your business, because remember what I told you when you were young. Well, in 2013, I believe it was, Mary Frances Hanson decided to retire as the director of the Miss Texas Senior America pageant. Of course, Mother couldn't be the MC anymore, because that would be a little, yeah. So anyway, I was the director. Mary Frances became the MC of the pageants with Scott Murray, you know, from Channel 5, and now he's moved on to his own little thing. And so I was the pageant director 2013, 2014. We didn't have a pageant 2014, 2015, but in 2015, I turned 60, and I told my mother, I'm going to enter the Miss Texas Senior America pageant. She says, that's your business. You go ahead and enter the Miss Texas Senior America pageant. Well, lo and behold, I won the title of Miss Texas Senior America 2015. I also, oh, by the way, let me do my wave. I also won the title of Miss Congeniality, but the most coveted award in that pageant is the Mary Frances Hanson Community Service Award. And you're awarded that for how many hours you have volunteered. Well, I won that too, because I love to volunteer my time, even though I was working full time. So I was so excited to win the trifecta that year in 2015. Well, when you win the title of Miss Texas Senior America, you get an all expense paid trip to Atlantic City, New Jersey to compete in the Miss Senior America pageant. So I was so excited. I asked my husband, Ken, would you love to go to the Miss Senior America pageant with me? Please accompany me so you can schlep my gowns and schlep my stuff. And he said, I would be happy to do that. Mother, would you like to go to the Miss Senior America pageant? She says, sure. How am I going to work in the Miss Senior America pageant when October is one of the biggest months of my speeches? But you call me the minute you get off that stage and you have won that title of Miss Senior America. Well, I competed in the pageant. I got in the top 10. My husband says, hurry up, go call your mother. She's called several times to see how you did. Well, I called up my mother. I said, Mother, guess what? I got in the top 10, and there was this silence on the other end of the phone. And she said, you didn't win? And I said, no, Mom, I didn't win. And she said, see, I told you those pageants are fixed. So that's what happened. She continued to say that. So there you go, Mary Frances. Sorry, but that's what she always says. But I'm going to conclude my talk about growing up Rumbly with my philosophy of life. But before I do, thank you all for tuning in. I love each and every one of you, even though I can't see you. I love doing Zoom speeches. If you want me to come do some speeches, I have other speeches. So happy to do whatever you want me to do. I have to give a shout out to the tap group that I'm involved in, Class Act Tap Company. We celebrated 34 years of being in existence. I love Class Act so much, and just love all of you. And again, I have to reiterate, Celebration Magazine, Deborah Saxon and Greg Saxon, they are the bomb. Zoe and the rest of the staff there, Dan, everybody who's involved in Celebration Magazine, thank you. And here's my philosophy of life. What good is sitting alone in a room? Life is a cabaret. It's like a Broadway musical with a lot of intermissions along the way. Life is not always easy. It has lots of ups and downs, but that's what keeps it interesting. In the Bible, Matthew 6:34 tells us to live each day for itself. In the movie Gran Torino, Clint Eastwood said, tomorrow is promised to no one. So climb aboard this red carpet ride I call life. Live each moment as though it were your last. And remember, life has no remote. You have to get up and change it. Thank you again so much. I love you all, and I hope to see you in person soon.
Woo! That was fantastic. Thank you so much, Jill. If you want to take yourself off mute, let's give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
All right.